everything's going to start here at the foot shear. First thing that we need to do is we just need to trim off so we get a nice straight edge that's square to our factory edge on our folder. So factory edge on our folder, make sure that it's tight up against our ruler. All right, there should be no gaps, and I'm going to slide that up so this curved portion of the ruler is just past the cutter. So again, I'm going to slide that up so the curved portion is just past that cutter, and I'll add a zoom in feature of that so you can see, again, just past that cutter. And then I go ahead and I make the cut, press down on the foot pedal all the way down to the floor, all right, and then back up again. What that's going to do is, as you can see, it's going to give me that nice square edge that I can work with. And the next thing I need to do from here is I just want to go ahead and I want to mark that corner so that I know that's my square corner. So I just go ahead and I add a little mark so I know that's my square corner. So I know everything I'm going to reference in the next step is going to be referenced off of this edge as well as this edge. Alright, so I've got my corner cut, my square edge. Alright, so I know that my edge that I cut is square to my factory edge on my folder. So now I need to lay out my 16 by 12 inch rectangle. So here, if you look at the plans, we need to get a 12 by 16 inch rectangle. So I'm going to get started by doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my 16 inch. So I'm going to measure towards the bottom of my folder, line up my 0 with the edge of my folder, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark out 16 inches. So now to make sure that this edge is going to be parallel to this edge, I also want to mark and measure towards the top of my folder. So I'm going to line up my 0, come over to 16, make that mark. Now that I have those two marks, I can go ahead and connect those. So I'm going to take the time to line up my ruler, make sure my ruler is right on my marks, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out that line. So now that's the 16-inch width of my, so what I did is I just laid out for this line right here. That's my 16-inch width. So now I need to lay out my 12-inch height. So to do that, I'm going to make a mark at 12 inches from the bottom edge towards this side, and then 12 inches from the bottom edge on this side as well. So there's a couple ways you can do this. I'm going to actually line up the 12-inch mark on my ruler with the edge of my folder. I'm going to now mark the 0 on my ruler. The other way to do that is, just like I did before, I line up my 0 mark. So the other way to do that is line up my 0 with the edge of my folder, and I can come up here and mark out my 12. So now what I can do is line up my ruler on those marks. And again, I really take the time to make sure that my ruler is lined up. And then I can go ahead and trace those out. So now what I'm going to do is head over to the foot shear, and I'm going to put this edge against the ruler and cut on this line, and then rotate, and then this edge against the ruler on the foot shear, or the guide on the foot shear, and cut off this piece. So this piece is getting cut off, as well as this piece is getting cut off. Okay, so now I've got my 12 by 16 inch rectangle. You can see I still have my little reference mark. That's my square corner. So next, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to page 2. All right, and you can see here It says create the hem fold and 90-degree fold lines. So we've got our hem fold and 90-degree fold lines. So I need to create those. So layout lines a ½ inch inwards from all 4 edges. So this is ½ inch. These lines are all a ½ inch in all the way around. So that's what I need to do next. Now there's 2 ways I can lay those out. The first way I can lay them out is I can go to my ruler. All right, I can line up my 0, measure over a ½ inch, mark that. Measure over a ½ inch, mark that. Lay my ruler on those, and again I measure in those 2 locations to make sure I stay parallel. Line up my ruler on my marks, really taking the time that I'm aligned on those marks, and I can go ahead and draw that out. So that's one way that I can create that. What I've done is I went ahead and I made these little layout triangles to make our lives a little bit easier. All right, so there's a little edge on this. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but there's a little edge here, and that edge is going to ride along the edge of our folder or our sheet metal. All right, and there's a little circle spot here. That's where your pencil is going to go. That is exactly a ½ inch from that little edge that it's going to ride on. So I have that ride against that edge. The key here is making sure that your pencil stays straight up. All right, if you're on an angle, you're going to get thrown off. So you want to make sure that that stays straight up, and you're going to want to make sure that that stays guiding along your edge. Okay, so I keep a little bit of pressure down, a little bit of pressure on that edge, and you can see it, take my time, and that gives me my perfect ½ inch offset. So I'm just going to finish off, lay that off on the top and bottom. Okay, so now that I have that ½ inch border all the way around, okay, then go to page 3 on my plans. Okay, now it creates the fold lines to create the folds for your sides. So you've got a fold line 3 inches, and another one 3 inches up. So 3 inches up from the bottom, 3 inches down from the top, and then 6 inches between. So this is going to become a side. That's going to be a side, and that's going to be the bottom. So now I'm going to go ahead and lay those out. So to do that, back to my ruler, I'm going to line up my 0 on my top edge, measure down 3 inches, and again I want to make sure I stay parallel. So I do that same measurement on the opposite side, line up my ruler, and draw my line across. Make sure you line up that ruler so that you fall right on your marks. Now I'm going to measure up from the bottom 3 inches, up from the bottom 3 inches. Now here on my 3 inch mark, and I'm going up to my 0, and then I can go ahead and lay out that mark as well. Okay, so now I've got my marks laid out. So this is going to be a side, that's going to be a side, that's going to be the bottom. So now that I have these laid out, I go to my next page. Now what I want to do is I want to lay out my cuts from my corners 45 degrees, as well as my cuts from my notches. All right, so these are going to end up getting cut off. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my trusty layout triangle. To create this, I use that edge again up against the edge of my folder or sheet metal, depending on what we're using. I'm going to bring that up again, make sure it stays nice and tight, and I want to make sure that this edge is going to go right through where those two intersect. So I go ahead and I mark that out. Okay, so I'm going to do that on all my corners. Okay, so now that I have my corners laid out, what I now want to do is create this little notch here. So to do that, again, make sure that's up against the edge. I'm going to bring this in so that it intersects with that corner here, and I'm going to trace that out. So that's one side, and that's the other side. And I'm going to do that on all four. Done. I have my corners marked to be cut, as well as my notches marked out. So next page, page 5. So now it talks about actually cutting these out. So we're going to cut out our corners on the foot shear, and we're going to cut out our notches on the notcher. So now we're going to head over to those tools. All right, so we're going to start here at the foot shear to continue with our cuts. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to clip these corners off here. So to clip these corners off, we're going to do that here at the foot shear. One of the key things is you do want to make sure that your material is going to get clamped down with that clamping bar, that the material is not going to sit in a point where it's not going to be clamped. And you'll see by the picture that it's not going to get clamped down. So we want to make sure that that clamping bar is going to clamp down on our material, like in this picture. Then we're going to take it and we're going to go ahead and we're going to line up our cut line with our blade. So I'm just going to double check. I want to make sure that that's lined up nicely. And I'll go ahead and I'll make that cut. And you can see I've clipped that corner off. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish off with those other corners. Okay, so I've got all my corners cut all the way around. Now I'm going to head to the notcher and create my notches. Okay, so here I am at the notcher. I'm going to go ahead and make my two notches that are going to get cut out. Now the key here is I want to make sure that my material is tight up against my guides. All right, my two guide stops. That's going to give me the perfect 1/2 inch for my notch. Now what I'm going to do is slide my material up, and I want to line up the point of my notch with my line. So I'm going to take the time to really kind of line that up, and then I pull the handle down all the way, and what that's going to do is that's going to cut out my notch. So I'm just going to continue that in all 4 locations. Sometimes I'll bring it down a little bit closer so I make sure it's lined up. Go ahead, I make my notch. Okay, and you can see my other two sides. And my notches are set.